this is a story, of boxing. I was mentioning to you earlier about boxing. Don't tell me how many fights you have, how many knockouts you have. Tell me who you fought, and I'll tell you who you are. Fighters you won. You could have 10 fights, 12 fights, but they got big names in there. You're a fighter. You've been in with the best.
At Hollywood Legion Stadium, if I'm not mistaken, in 1952, Gil Cadilli and Keeney Turan were boxing the semi-lineup. And if I'm not further mistaken, I think Enrico Bolanos was fighting the main event. But I know Keeney and Gil since we were about 9 years old. They were like brothers to me. I became the National Golden Gloves champion in 1952, but I'll tell you one thing right now. I owe a lot to Keeney and Cadilli because they helped me win that championship, among other people. Because I try to emulate them in their styles and their thinking and the way they thought as far as being winners in the boxing game. But that fight that they fought at the Hollywood Legion Stadium, a 6-rounder, not because they were my dearest friends, but that was one of the greatest fights that I've ever seen in my life. And the thing that made it so heartwarming was the fact that they were part of me. And I didn't want either one to lose. Of course, you would feel the same way. I did not want either one to lose, but let me say this, that I guess God answered my prayers that night because they called it a draw.
It was the best 6-round fight I ever, and I told him that. We waited outside Pico Rivera that night. I was working the fights in Pico Rivera, and he was waiting for Keeney Turan. They became very close friends. In fact, you and him embraced at Pico Rivera when you met there.
Oh, yeah.
And this was after they fought those two, a 12-rounder and then a 10-rounder. But that night I waited for him and waited for Keeney to come out, and I had to tell them both to their face. I said, I hope I'm not embarrassing you, but it was the best 6-round fight I ever saw, and I'm glad it ended in a draw.
When we were teenagers, I remember Keeney, but he was not from our neighborhood. He lived in a different neighborhood. And the only time we used to meet was when we used to go to the church dances. He was always there, and we kind of had a good relationship, except they were kind of rivals, and I think that was brought up from the news and the newspapers, but they were friends, but yet rivals, especially when they had to fight together. That was really hard because Gil, I remember, didn't want to fight Keeney, and I don't know what Keeney felt, but it was a hard fight.
They were blood brothers. They grew up together and they trained together. And he told me that Forbes would have Keeney work defense for an hour and Gil would try and get in on him. And then he'd swap it around and have Gil go defense for an hour. Keeney tried, and they did this every day for 4 or 5 years, I guess, when they were kids. He started at 14 with them, I think.
They were one of the greatest amateur fighters and professional fighters that I have ever met. And I can assure you that I know what I'm talking about because I started watching fights in the late 30s at the Hollywood Legion Stadium and at the Olympic. I saw some of the greats, Henry Armstrong, Sugar Ray. I saw Joe Louis come into town, Juan Zurita, Baby Arismendi, and so forth. I saw a lot of great fighters. So I rate them up there. I rate them.
For some reason, his contract got sold and we had to move to San Francisco. And that was really tough because I had to move away from my parents, my home, everything I ever knew, with 2 little babies, and I think I was just turning 19 by then. So, when we first arrived in San Francisco, we lived in a hotel that his manager that bought his contract had set up for us, and it was very difficult for two babies in a hotel room.
You know, his manager at the time was Sid Flaherty.
Sid Flaherty.
No, Flaherty stole them from us. We had it. We paid Bert Lewis, who owned the Barbican Motors, $5,000, and Gil went with us with Jack Kern, Doc, Dempsey's manager, Mickey Walker's manager, all a great man.
Willie Pep, former two-time featherweight champion of the world and once the darling of Eastern boxing fans, goes west to Parks Air Force Base in California to provide a stepping stone bout for San Francisco's Gil Cadilli. Pep, who was placed on the retired list in New York rings, wants this bout to convince his critics he still is a sound fighter. Late in the fourth round, Gil Cadilli in the white trunks lands a solid left jab that opens a deep gash in the corner of Willie Pep's right eye. Pep is hurt, and Cadilli moves in to take advantage of the situation. The veteran Pep calls on the fancy footwork and ring prowess that gained him 184 victories in 190 fights. Willie manages to ward off the charging Gil Cadilli. Though Willie Pep survived the fourth round, his lacerated eye may bring on a technical knockout. However, Commission Doctor Robert Ladden examines the cut and allows the fight to continue. 2 rounds later, you would never know the gash was there. Pep in the black resembles the Pep of old as he batters a tired Cadilli with wave after wave of short, powerful combinations. The barrage continues through the 8th, 9th, and 10th rounds, with ex-champion Pep pouring it on the young San Francisco featherweight. After every clinch, Pep charges back to rain punches on Gil Cadilli, and does so until the final bell ends the bruising battle. Gil Cadilli is declared the winner on a split decision, a verdict that arouses many protests.
That decision he got over Pep didn't help him. You know, that caused an uproar, the way it was done. It was on an army base.
Gil Cadilli beat Willie Pep. And I tell you what, Willie Pep was one of the greatest fighters, if not the greatest fighter of all time, featherweight champion. And Gil Cadilli was with him. He beat him. Split decision or no split decision. They say he was robbed, he was robbed. But it was close enough for him to win it.
I'd like to recall Gil Cadilli, who was a good friend of mine, a great guy, a great fighter. When he beat Willie Pep commented that that was the greatest fighter that he had ever fought, so you take it from there.
He was a hell of a boxer, and he had a good career, and to me, he could have been a world champ anytime he really got into it.
Gil Cadilli, that man was a beautiful man. Besides being a hell of a fighter, I was there when he beat Willie Pep. I saw most of his fights. This guy, well, I mean, the greatest. I don't have enough in my heart to tell you how much I love that guy.
He was so good. And he was just a great fighter. He was just a... boy, if he were around today, he'd be a champion because he was that good. When he beat Willie Pep.
You know, to beat Willie Pep would be a crowning achievement for any fighter.
Gil Cadilli in the black trunks coming out of his corner. The fighters touch gloves, and there's 3 minutes left. 2 minutes left in the fight.